There's Will and Jean.
I don't know. Yeah, we can't start without Will and Jean. Hey, Harry.
Good evening. Oh,
Although it is 7 o'clock.
All right, we're up and running when you're ready.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would everybody join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, you go this way.
hey, Steve, before we start, I just wanted to let you know that I incorporated your thought about one person doing the Pledge of Allegiance at our RTC meeting, because we had like 30 people all on a different word. It worked out well. They're using it.
Sounds like gobbledygook if you have.
All right.
Okay, our first order of business is to have Jen Heaton-Jones from the Executive Director of the Housatonic Resource Recovery Authority is going to give us a presentation on the glass recycling container that we're thinking of putting in our parking lot. Jen, Dan, can you share?
Sure. Good evening. I will share. Let's see. Let me know if you see just my presentation. Yes? Okay, great. You never know. All right, so bear with me 1 second. For those of you who do not know who I am the Executive Director of the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority. We represent 12 municipalities in Western Connecticut. Brookfield is one of our member towns. We are honored to have Steve Dunn as our co-chair. And my job is to manage all things solid waste management and recycling on behalf of our members, on behalf of the town of Brookfield and all of our members, to help keep our members in compliance with state regulations, public education and outreach. And then we have these types of programs, which we'll talk about tonight, sustainable programs that help increase waste reduction and recycling. So I'm going to start with mixed recycling, so you can have a broad understanding of why we're going where we're going. So the simple problem, look at this picture. It's dirty, it's contaminated with items that don't belong, and therefore the value of the commodities are impacted. This is actually a photograph of single stream recycling at the transfer station. It's pretty devastating. It's garbage. So we have a real problem. And wait until you, sorry, unfortunately all of my notes have sort of are a little bit backwards, so I apologize. I'm just gonna go back one, okay. So glass is a state mandated recyclable, and by state law, we all must recycle our glass. And before single stream recycling was created, glass was recycled into bottles and other products. It's 100% recyclable, infinitely. However, when single stream was introduced, it not only reduced the value of the glass and the likelihood that it would become a new product, it reduced the value of the other commodities, because every time the glass is handled, it breaks into small particles and they attach themselves to paper and cardboard, reducing their value. And this is the truth. Sorry, maybe I should have had Dan control everything. I don't know why it's bouncing around. Strange. I apologize. It's weird. Okay, so I have no control. What you're looking at here is single stream recycling, glass. This is what happens to glass in the mixed stream. The right image is a pile of what we call MRF glass. It's the glass that was sent to the material recovery facility. We call it a MRF. And the left is a close-up of that pile. And it's really hard to see the glass. The glass that is captured at a material recovery facility is mixed with bits of paper, as you can see, bottle caps and other unwanted debris. And the truth is, most of our glass is going through a MRF in Connecticut, and it's never recycled. It's actually sent to a landfill as alternate daily cover. in order for it to go to a glass processor, it needs to be clean glass. So the result is MRF glass is being sent nearly 500 miles out of the state of Connecticut in order for it to be recycled. Let's see if sliding to the next slide will actually work. So this is inside the material recovery facility, and you can see the bits and shards of glass. So this impacts the wear and tear on the facility, reducing the value and creating costs, maintenance and repair costs. And why do we care about that? Because it is a direct impact to the cost to the municipalities, because our processing cost, our tip fees are based on, has a component of that is processing costs. And we incur the maintenance and repair. So when glass is going through material recovery facility, wearing and tearing on the belts and the machines, and in the right side is a hand, you can see the, it's shining glass. It's an abrasive, and it just is constantly wearing and tearing on the machines. So that's another reason why we need to get glass out of the single stream. So I don't want to just focus on that glass is the problem. I want to also point out that there's a lot of other small pieces of unacceptable materials, such as prescription bottles, loose bottle caps, lighters, batteries, and shredded paper that enter the stream that are non-recyclable. We have a serious issue with contamination, as you saw at the beginning, but we can't fix it all at once. And so we need to start somewhere, and that's why I'm starting with glass. We need to produce a better quality material to market. In addition, source separation of glass may also reduce significant carbon emissions due to less handling and transportation. And so taking the steps forward for recycled glass, I'll just step in and explain why we are here and why we're kind of doing what we're doing. In 2018, House Bill 5360 was passed by Connecticut, by the legislation to allow Connecticut DEEP. Upon the request of a municipality, we are a municipal agency on your behalf to authorize a 2-year pilot program for the collection of glass. For nearly a year, the HRA discussed the pros and cons of a glass collection program. We've met with public works directors, transfer station operators, and regional recycling task force, and so on. And the program would look like this. Residents will be asked to stop putting their glass in their curbside bin and take it to their local recycling center to drop off for free. Oak Ridge will supply the collection container to each municipality and provide the transportation. The glass will be sent to an in-state processor and to be made into a new product, unlike where it's happening now, where it's being sent 500 miles out of the state to landfill. It will either go to urban mining in Beacon Falls, that makes Positive is the product. It's a ground glass Pozzolan. It's an industrial filler made of 100% recycled post-consumer glass. It is safer, sustainable, and higher performing material than the counterpart, and it dramatically reduces CO2 emissions in concrete. Or the glass will be sent to Strategic Material in Windsor, who currently is the only glass processor in the state that makes clean material for bottle-to-bottle recycling. They take in all the redemption glass in the state. And yes, there'll be some private haulers in the region who will collect glass at the curb, and so some residents don't have to use a drop-off program. This picture is taken from Ridgefield's transfer station. We launched the phase 1 of our program in February of 2019, collecting glass separate at 3 of our transfer stations in Bethel, Reading, and Ridgefield. Since then, we've added Bridgewater and New Fairfield, and we've collected over 200 tons of clean glass. I'm showing you this picture. It's actually out of Fairfield County, Virginia, where they're conducting a similar program. I'm showing this container because this is the container I'm hoping to request for the town of Brookfield. It has very small holes, unlike the, I'm going to show you back the other slide if it works. These are much larger hole, conducive, a little bit more conducive to contamination, where this container is much more restrictive and hopefully it would reduce any possibility of contamination. So we're only accepting food and beverage glass containers and bottles. We have a lot of public education, outreach, information, signage that would go along with the container, these glass only stickers, and it's very clear that the only thing we are accepting is beverage and food containers. No ceramic, no cookware, no mirrors, no light bulbs. So this is the material we're collecting. It's very clean. This photograph is from the Ridgefield site. Residents who are participating are doing a really great job. I would say 99.9% of the material, and you look at this, you don't see anything that doesn't belong. It looks great. So this is urban mining in Beacon Falls. They have just started taking in MRF glass. Material recovery facility. So that dirty glass photo that I showed you previously is actually why they built this plant. It was designed to resolve some of the issues with single stream MRF glass. And so I've been asked a challenging question in the past few months now that urban mining is up and running, why not just keep the glass in the single stream and let it go through this process? And one of the reasons is the carbon footprint, the collection, the transportation, the wear and tear, like I showed you at the MRF, quality of material. And I'm actually going to show you sort of pros and cons here. So here are 4 different scenarios. Let's start with the top, the green. The mixed recycling. So this is in the green top, the green section. The top is the scenario where materials in the single stream picked up at the curb. What's happening right now? It's picked up at the curb, it's trucked to a transfer station, it's tipped, then loaded back into a truck. So it's tipped at the transfer station, loaded back into a truck, driven and transported to the MRF. It's tipped on the tipping floor. It's picked back up on another truck. It's then taken to urban mining, tipped and processed again. So it's processed twice, right? So think about how many times it's handled and picked up and transported in this and the carbon footprint. So the blue section is just glass. It's just our drop-off program. So the hauler picks up in this case, it's the hauler picking up at the curb. The hauler picks up the curb at the resident's home. He takes it directly to the transfer station, and then it's directly taken to urban mining because it's source separated. In the red, it would be like the Brookfield program or any of our transfer station programs, where the resident drops off the material directly into a container. That 20 to 30 yard container is picked up by the truck and driven directly to urban mining, never being tipped again, picked up, processed. It's just simply collected and taken directly to the processor. There's less energy for urban mining to process it because there's not the contamination and there's not the residual, so it reduces in cost. The most ideal situation would be we increase our current bottle bill system in the state of Connecticut. So consumer returns the glass to redemption center. The redemption system pays for the transportation directly to the processor, and it's very clean, very similar to the red, but actually is materials being made from bottle to bottle rather than just a positive. And so this is what my hope is, that we will move forward and I can convince the town of Brookfield to consider collecting clean source separated glass. It's the right thing to do for the environment. We reduce our dependence on the natural resources and use the material as a feedstock. Otherwise, it's all going to landfill. We reduce our carbon emissions on the handling and transportation of the material, and we reduce the overall cost. So my ask this evening is for the Board of Selectmen to approve a container in the town of Brookfield to collect glass only. This is still a pilot program, and I can be modify or adjust any issues, address any issues and concerns that you may have as we're experiencing the collection of the material. So I am more than happy to answer any questions going forward.
I have a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Sue.
Jen, who monitors the drop-off space so that we know it's not getting overfilled and, you know, everyone's not leaving anything behind, next to it if it is filled up? Who monitors that? Is that the town, or is that something that the HRRA will do?
So that's a really good question. So for all of our other towns, you're unique. You and Sherman are unique because you don't have a transfer station. So this will be something that we have to build a little bit different. On all the other transfer stations, it's the operator is doing all of that work. In this situation, it will likely have to be a partnership between our office and Oak Ridge and the town, where you'll keep an eye on it and we'll monitor it. It takes about a month to fill up a 20-yard container at a transfer station. And that's where folks are regularly visiting the transfer station specifically to deposit recyclables or solid waste. In this case, a little bit different, where folks aren't heading to that container specifically, with other items. It would likely be used a little less often. I'm imagining, and I may be wrong, that it won't fill up as fast as our transfer stations.
Yeah, Sue, Harry, one of the things we looked at is for this very reason, is to put it in a place that is visible from the street, but not standing out there right in your face. And that's why we wanted to put it next to the fire department in that gravel parking lot. Also, we'll go with the smaller openings that only glass can go through them. Because my fear is some people start trying to use a dumpster as a free garbage can. So
Right.
that's what we're going to start with. And I think we should do a pilot program, see how it works. I think most people in town are going to be pretty good about it. And if somebody can see you from the street, you're probably not going to dump a couple cans of garbage outside of it, but we're just going to have to monitor it.
When could we get this started, Jen?
Well, once I have the approval from the Board of Selectmen, it would be a notification to Oak Ridge and they'll build the container because it has to be specified. It will take a few weeks for that. And so I would say probably beginning of January.
Would there be bins that would be distributed to families? Because everyone's got the big bins now. Right. So I still have some of my older ones that, when they used to pick them up on a weekly basis. But is that something that they could get just to make it a little easier for them?
So we are not providing containers for collection. We just suggest a cardboard box, a laundry detergent container. I just don't have the funding in our budget to provide containers to every town. But I myself am participating. I live in the town of Bridgewater. I'm participating in the program here, and I'm just using a couple cardboard boxes, and I go twice a week when I can, and sometimes it's every other week, just whenever I fill up a container. So it's really not that burdensome to have a container just for glass.
Okay. Do you know if there's any haulers that come into Brookfield that are doing this for other towns, let's say Bethel or Ridgefield, that some of our residents could have pickup at their home?
So we haven't fully launched to the full program, what we're calling a full program, to encourage all residents to stop using curbside collection for glass. We're waiting for the full launch of every town having a container in place. And then we'll do a full public outreach regarding educating the wider public to do this. Right now, it's basically residents who are utilizing their local transfer station it has been brought to their attention that this program is available.
I just have one other question. In your picture, I think it was from Ridgefield, it did show what looked like a plastic cap on one of the bottles. So is that something that we're just going to have to really educate people that it is glass, and to take any of the extra pieces like that off?
Yeah, so when we launch a full launch, it will be in the newspaper, we'll do social media, we'll really educate the public in regards to what you can and can't go into the container, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. We know that there'll be some contamination. This is actually the beauty of urban mining versus strategic. Strategic material can take only 100% clean glass, and that's why they take in bottle bill glass. It's 100% clean. And where urban mining, they're designed to take dirty glass. They're designed to take MRF glass. And so if a little bit of contamination gets in, it won't ruin the entire program where it would if it was going to strategic. However, I really want to ensure to the public that it's important for only acceptable material, because if we ever want to switch and we want some of the material to be made into bottles to bottle, we want to have a clean, we want to from the get-go have clean material, not contaminated material. And this is a pilot. And so yes, there was one item in that whole container that I showed you, but everything else was clean. And so I'm very pleased with it. I'm not too worried about one bottle or one cap, and they can handle that.
Okay.
Steve or
All
Jen,
right. So we'll educate them, but we're not going to be at risk of anything if something slips in there.
No.
We're not going to be at
Okay.
risk of anything because it's going to urban mining.
Okay, great. Well, when you're ready to vote.
Harry,
Well,
you
yeah,
want to comment?
I have a question. What about cost? As far as do we pay for the container? Is that provided?
No.
No,
Yeah.
it's all provided.
We would pay a $10 a ton tip fee, which we estimate somewhere between $200 and $500 a year in total cost.
And
Everything else is free.
what fee is that? What
The
is-
disposal fee. So the container will be supplied, the transportation will be supplied. When Oak Ridge takes the container to urban mining and what we call tips it, the tip fee is $10 a ton. And right now in some of our larger towns, we're seeing about 3 to 5 tons every month or every other month. And these are our larger transfer stations. So that's why I estimate with Steve, it's going to be between $200 and $500 a year for just the tip fee. Everything else is taken care of. HRI will handle all the public education and outreach, all of the signage. Oak Ridge will take care of the container and the transportation.
Great. Steve,
So,
would this be something, sorry, Sue, I didn't even.
no,
Would this be something that we would just roll into our either our Parks and Rec or our,
We put this in Public Works and recycling
Works?
under Public Works for the cost.
No, I'm sorry, as far as monitoring.
Monitoring, I think it's going to be Public Works. It'll also be our building management here, Sheldon Kahn and Bobby Nakano. You know, they'll be driving by all the time and we'll check it and we'll monitor it. And if it becomes a problem, then we're going to have to address it. My overall goal here, and this is just the start, we're working now on possibly building our own recycling yard in where the brush yard is now. We still have the brush yard, but I would like to do more recycling. It's just not happening properly. And you can see when people from Brookfield, when we have, let's say we have the hazardous waste recycling day, 70% of the cars, over 500 cars, were from Brookfield. Bethel had a hazardous waste recycling a couple of months ago, and 2 cars from Brookfield went to it. Anybody can go to any one of these recycling events, but if you do it locally, you get great response. We've done it with hazardous waste. We've done it with electronics. It's worked really, really well. And we're getting to the point, I think, where we as a community need to do more recycling. So what I'd like to do is move all of this into a full recycling where we could recycle televisions and whatever, mattresses.
So,
And everything.
so going into this program, we would just either move the container or whatever. This would just be part of our recycling program. It's
Yeah,
not-
this is we're gonna start with glass, and if we can get it approved by the boards, and we all agree, then we would build a recycling yard and move the glass there, and then we would have people who would monitor it. You have to have somebody at your recycling yard, otherwise people just dump stuff all over the place.
I mean, that would come out, that would not be that would be a flat line cost, right? Because that would come from the cost of the annual fees or something, I would assume.
Yeah, it would be a cost. Typically, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong here, recycling centers repay about 80–85% of their costs because everything is so separated. Some of the stuff does have value. Metal.
that was going to be my question about the glass. Someone is benefiting by getting our glass. Is there ever any funds that go back to the town for what we're contributing?
Maybe
Usually
at
it's a
some
net
point.
zero.
Yeah, we try to get to net zero. Right now, it's about $90 a ton to tip. We would be paying $10 a ton. So we're saving, let's say, $80 a ton on tipping this. So yeah, we're getting something back. We don't get 100%. And the recycling market has gone through the floor because China and Taiwan and India have stopped taking recycling from the United States. So the prices of recycling, the value of it, of dumping and single stream has gone through the floor, right, Jen?
Yes, so the commodity markets aren't there. And even when they were there, yes, you could get paid for glass at one point when it was source separated into color. But by the time you paid for transportation, et cetera, it was basically zero. But it was much more efficient to separate it separately. You know, we won't see that with this. But the point is that it's in state, it creates jobs. It's cleaner, it's more efficient, it's more sustainable than what we're doing now. So that's really the important aspect.
It's environmental.
Yes,
Sure.
yes, I agree 100%. And I think it's a start. And if we can do a full recycling, I think that would be even better, because how much stuff do you put in your garbage that you know can be recycled? And it's not getting recycled. If this stuff is all mixed together, it's not worth anything to anybody.
Right.
So,
Right.
okay, any other questions, comments, Harry, Sue?
I'm all set.
Okay, so I make a motion that the selectmen adopt the HRA glass recycling program. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Carries
Just-
3-0.
yes. I'm
Jen,
excited to see this happen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen, for bringing it to Brookfield. That's
Yes,
great.
thank you for your support. I apologize for my presentation was a little bit backwards, but I appreciate your patience and have a wonderful evening.
And Jen,
Thank
can
you
we
too.
get something that's not purple?
Yes, you can get something that's not purple.
Forest
Oh, yeah.
green or
It
Green
will
is
likely be
nice.
green. It will likely be green. So, and I will also get you those numbers, Steve. My apologies for the question regarding the transfer station and the cost analysis. I am actually working on an analysis for the entire region where Brookfield can compare that to see what it might look like for your future as well.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, have a good night.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, our Chief Jay Purcell will provide an informational presentation on the Axon body cameras. Chief.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit tonight about the body worn recording equipment that our officers are going to begin to use, I would say within the next month or so. As you know, the Public Act 20-1, which was passed by the Connecticut legislature in the late summer, early fall, mandates that all police officers in Connecticut as of June of 2022 must wear body worn cameras when engaging with the public in any way. We a couple of years ago appropriated about $76,000 in the capital budget to acquire body worn cameras for our officers. We've been studying them and taking a look at the pros and cons and the experiences of other departments in the state and around the country. There's been a lot of literature provided by the National Institute of Justice and various other organizations. And most departments in the country now are using body worn recording equipment, and we're going to continue to do that. In Brookfield, we began in the mid to late 80s with in-car video. We had one car equipped with a bulky, ugly VHS camera with a locked recording device in the trunk, and it was very clunky. Now we're to the point where all our cars are equipped with video recording devices. As soon as the car comes back into the parking lot of the building, the system picks up on it. The information is uploaded into the servers, and it's collected there and has to be stored locally. So you can imagine that requires a lot of storage space. 9 cars, 9 cars that are used regularly, 10 cars actually when you include the K9 cars. It's a lot of information to store. Now we're adding to that 34 police officers, myself included. All of us, whenever we interact with the public in an official capacity, are going to have to record that interaction. And so we have chosen the Axon solution, which is a solution that's been chosen by about 50 agencies in Connecticut alone. They also provide, and one of the reasons we went with them was because our electronic control devices, our tasers, are produced by Axon, and we already store some data as a result of the tasers on their evidence.com solution, which is the cloud-based solution that we're going to be using to store all this video. The camera themselves are pretty small. This is oh god, all right, there we go. This is what they look like. They're relatively small. My cow is eating mine, but anyway,
We got it. We can see it, Jay.
they're pretty small, and it's not going to take much. They're mounted on the uniform. There's different devices they use. There are magnetic mounts. There are pocket clips. Everything. The device will be mounted somewhere along the front of the officer's uniform, whether he be a plainclothes officer, depending upon the nature of what he's doing. A plainclothes officer may also be wearing one of these cameras. They have a 12-hour battery life, 146-degree diagonal field of view when they take in data. They have embedded GPS, so if we have an officer out in the field somewhere and we're notified they're in trouble, GPS is right on that camera. We can zero in and get help to that officer immediately. They're LTE connected, which basically is like a cell phone. There's multi-camera playback. The officer can play it back in his car. He can play it back on a phone, and he can play it back in the office just to review what goes on. Some of the benefits that are talked about regarding body-worn recording equipment are more transparency, increased civility. Believe it or not, people tend to behave more when they know they're on camera. That cuts down on the conflict that our officers might experience. Quicker resolution of complaints because there's hard video evidence right there, audio and video evidence, corroborating evidence and arrests that can be sent right down to the courts. And there are training opportunities. If something goes right, we can talk about it. Here's why this was so right. And if something goes wrong, we can also look at it and say, how can we improve for the next time? That sort of thing. Now, there are some shortcomings. One of those shortcomings is cost. It's not cheap. Marcia can probably attest to the fact that eye-opening costs. Our ongoing costs of ownership of this program is probably going to be, and Marcia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing, and it's going to be part of our operating budget because most of what we've got here is going to be funded either through the capital budget, asset forfeiture, and grant reimbursement from the state of Connecticut. That'll get us started. But moving forward, we're going to have, and you'll see in our operating budget, not this coming year, but probably in future years, at least for the next 4 years, 5 years, 25,000 or so a year in the operating budget to manage this camera system. Now, this includes several things. It refreshes every 2.5 years. You get all new physical equipment. It pays for the cloud storage. It pays for the software that's going to do the redaction. If you have the video that has license plates and non-involved people in them, you have to take those things out. So they're not part of the video that's used in a prosecution or that's released under an FOI or something of that nature. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. This company offers a front to back solution that accomplishes all that for us. And we're going to end up talking with one vendor. We don't have to go to a redaction software company. We don't have to go to a storage company. We don't have to go to a hardware company. It's one company that does it all. They're very well regarded and have tremendous experience in the field. And we're pretty excited about it. Our officers, we piloted these cameras. 5 officers were using them for a period of time. They found them to be extremely helpful. People reacted well to them. And the officers think of them as a backup to the good work that they do. This is going to be video proof of the good work that they do. So we're looking forward to it. Clearly, policy is an important component of operating a program such as this. When the camera should not be used. It should not go into medical facilities and treatment rooms and private spaces, bathrooms, and things of this nature. So the officers, through policy and training, learn when it's appropriate to be used, when they must be used, and then when they must not be used. So that's all about policy and training. We're up on that. We modeled our policy after the model policy provided by Police Officer Standards and Training Council, which is based on national accreditation standards and is standard throughout Connecticut. So we're going to be on firm ground there. Just getting it all up and running. Matt Donadio and Brian Flanagan are doing a lot of the behind the scenes work, which gets everything set up in the cloud storage, gets all the officers' accounts so that they can access the video, and they have to code it every time they have to, you do a traffic stop, you have to take a look at that video after your shift, and now you have to code it. Well, this is a traffic stop. This is a traffic stop where I issued a ticket, so it's got to be held on to for longer. So every officer is going to be responsible for going in and looking at each video and coding it as it's appropriate each and every day when they're working. So there's a lot more work the officers are going to be doing. At the end of the day, we're hoping that this solution, although it's expensive, is going to be a big plus for us, the professionalism of our agency and the professionalism of our officers.
Jay, I have a few questions. And thanks for your service. Thanks for all the work you do for us here.
You're welcome, Eric.
Is this going to be financed through the town or through the, like the overtime fund, the police fund? How will this be financed?
There's $76,000 in capital right now. The first big payment that's going to be made is $115,000 ballpark. 76,000 of that is from capital, and we're funding the balance of that amount in the asset forfeiture fund. But the expectation is that the state of Connecticut is paying for about 30% of that in terms of a grant reimbursement. So that money should come back. So zero cost to the town up front. Moving on year to year, there's going to be about a $25,000 increase in our operating budget each year to manage this program.
Okay.
And again,
Harry, can I
Harry,
jump
have
in
to
on that
stress,
one?
Hold on. Go ahead.
This
the
is
funding
an-
source for that. I'm saying the operating budget, but that's just me.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with Jay. This is a normal ongoing operating expense. It's not a one-off thing that we could use that Jay sometimes comes to us from the outside services fund, like for the garage. This
It will be
shouldn't
in
come
5
out.
minutes.
Right. The other thing I had, other than the information that we're going to be able to gather, I guess, is it something mandatory? I mean, are we a municipality that requires body cams? I know nationally, body cams in a lot of areas are a must. We've survived without them. If we, and again, I'm not saying I'm against it, Jay, but if we didn't get them, I mean, to me, is there that great a need that we have to have them right now with all of the other costs that we have and the uncertainty with the virus? And again, I'm not saying I'm not for it. I just want a little bit more information on, is this something that the town of Brookfield really has to have?
The short answer is yes. The Connecticut legislature mandated it by law.
That was my next, my next question. I should have guessed that one before.
The answer is yes, Harry. We have to.
Okay. Then why are you coming to us? Or just explain what the program
It's
is?
an informational program.
Okay, thank you. Jay.
You know, essentially, the town approved the body cameras for the Brookfield Police Department when it approved the capital
Right,
capital fund to make the purchase.
right.
So we cobbled together the money to make it happen. And so we made the purchase of the body cameras, and the program is going to take place starting about a month from now, once they're delivered and everything is set up. But we wanted you to know what they were all about. That we had planned even before this mandate to bring them on board, but it was not a screaming need of the Brookfield Police Department, because we have a very good police department with good professional officers who do not engender complaints about police brutality and violating rights and things of that nature. We're very fortunate in that regard.
Right. Okay.
That having been said, we do get some complaints, and this will provide evidence of that encounter, and then decisions can be made. And God forbid something very bad happens, we do have the
Okay.
we do have the camera view.
I know that we, it had been approved. I was just, thinking in light of everything else that's in front of us. But I should have asked if it was mandated first. But thank you for your information.
Yeah, and just in terms of full transparency, we want the board to be aware that this is going to be an ongoing cost in the future. And we want everybody to be aware of that.
Right. No, I understand.
In the contract, it's a mandate. We have to do this. Marcia did her due diligence through Tom Beecher and so forth. We had the contract reviewed. If something bad happens in Brookfield and we just can't afford it, we're not going to suffer a penalty because of it, but the law says we have to have it. So, it's kind of a catch-22, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay.
But we think it's going to be a good thing for Brookfield. Again, I can't thank Matt Donadio and Brian Flanagan on our staff enough for the hard work they've put in, Brian especially, in getting the demo products here and reviewing all the other vendors that are out there. But this Axon product is the best one for Brookfield, and it's scalable as we start to age out of our existing in-car camera system. That too has been mandated, that every police vehicle have a camera in it. We could have to add some cameras to some of our cars that don't have them now. Right now, only our patrol cars have them. Now they want every single police vehicle to have a camera for some reason. So we may have to add. Axon provides a solution that's scalable in that evidence.com framework. Again, one vendor, one person to call, and the problem gets fixed. Their service is fantastic based on our experience with them, with the tasers and so forth. So we're happy with the choice we've made.
Thank you. It's still a shame that our government throws a blanket over things like this and drags us into the mess that some cities and municipalities are in. It upsets me that we get lumped into that. But I want to thank you for everything you're doing for our police station. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. And again, we're looking at this as a positive. We're going to try and make the best of this that we can. We think it's going to be a good thing for us. We think it's going to possibly highlight some of the good work that we do that may not have been displayed prior to this. So.
Yeah, Jay, I don't see this as a negative. I think your point being made, that people are on their best behavior, knowing that your officers had cameras on them, is important. So well, I do thank you guys as well, but I think it's equally as important to protect you as well as the residents. So
yeah, I think one of the big experiences,
and 25,000 a year is worth that.
Yeah, one of the big experiences nationally is some frivolous complaints have just dropped off. People don't make the complaints because they know the evidence is there that what they're saying happened didn't happen.
Sure.
I'm not saying everybody's innocent, but if something happens, we can address it, see it, and work with it.
Yeah, so. You've got proof. Yeah. Thank you, Jay.
Yep, great.
Appreciate
it. So if there's no more questions, we'll ask Chief Purcell to give us a presentation on his new storage building that they would like to build.
Hey, Dan, have you got the...
Yep.
It's ugly as all get out, I know. But what we need, and this is a little bit bigger, I think, and a little bit more gaudy than what we're going to have, but this is essentially the style of the building. It's a canvas covered frame. We're going to have a garage door on the front of it, and there'll be a man door to the side so the officers can get in and out. And the plan also calls for running power to it, so there'll be lights on the inside, and there will be, as opposed to this being stuck out in a field somewhere, there will be an asphalt pad, because our mechanics have told us that we absolutely have to have asphalt underneath this. And I'll go back and I'll say, why are we asking for this? We have two larger vehicles, the mobile operations unit and the scuba vehicle that are kept outside at our facility. They are infested with rodents. They have snow caked and ice. Water infiltration is destroying these vehicles. We've invested good money in them. We have to get them under cover somehow. We did not think that the best solution to do it would be a permanent structure, because we're still studying what we're going to do with the police building in terms of are we adding on and renovating? Are we building something new? We don't know. That's in the future. That's a discussion that we're going to have in the future. But right now, immediately, we have to get these vehicles under cover. The acquisition of the 43 Silver Mine Road property was a great benefit to us. We've got one of our spare vehicles in that garage over there. The property enables us to erect this structure, and we're asking for support from the Board of Selectmen. The Police Commission unanimously endorsed it. We're looking for $38,500 to build a structure that will house these vehicles and protect them from the elements, hopefully keep the rodents out, and help have them last a while longer, because it's a big number to try and replace them. And so we want to get more life out of them if we can. But if they continue to stay outside the way they do, it's going to be a mess. And for that reason, we're asking you to support our effort to get this vehicle. Dan, have you got the map there? That's the front. That goldenrod plot there is the area where it's going to go on the property. As you can see, the driveway comes in. Park and Rec, I talked to Mary Knox today. I know they're planning on doing some screen planting behind that house, because a lot of the tree growth that you see there is no longer there. So they're going to put some evergreens there, and I've talked to her about some screen plantings around the structure as well. So we're going to work with them to make it look nice. We had originally wanted to put it up a little bit closer to the road. Steve felt it wasn't something he wanted to see looking at from the road. So we think this location is good. We've scouted it out. Jim Doctor and the Public Works people can do the site work for us, and the unit comes in a kit, and they'll build it for us as well.
Wow.
I mean, this isn't a perfect solution. What we really want is actual structures, but it is a very good temporary solution. We pushed it back here. It was originally going to be in the upper left-hand corner of, Silver Mine. Yeah, in that area. And I just saw from the road, that's just going to look like the Dickens for residents driving by. And so we've all agreed that this is probably the best place. We'll put plantings around it and try to keep it as innocuous as possible. But this equipment, Jay, how much money have we spent on upgrading these vehicles and getting?
Well, the vehicles are worth if we had to replace those vehicles today, the mobile operations unit's a $200,000 vehicle, and then the other one's probably $100,000 or $115,000.
Yeah.
So we'd be looking at a $250,000 if we had to replace those vehicles.
Yeah, at least.
Steve, Jay, I'm trying to picture the vehicles. How tall are these vehicles?
The mobile operations unit's about 11 feet tall. So we're going to put a 12-foot door on that.
I mean, that building, that's got to be 22 feet high, correct?
It is, and that's because of the arch. You've got to have it able to handle the snow load and the wind load. So it's an engineered building, and it's got a snow load and a wind resistance that's appropriate to the town zoning regulations, because we had to check with the building department to find out what the ratings were.
Right.
But in order to accomplish that doorway, we'd have to have it much deeper to get the two vehicles in side by side. If we didn't go with that 12-foot door height, and that arch at the top is necessary to accomplish that because of the way the building comes up and rounds out.
Okay, okay. Steve, do we have any when I say long-term plans, how far out would we be to having a structure?
We've talked about this a little bit, and I've discussed it with Jay, and I've also discussed it with the Center Fire Company. It seems to me, and now this is just preliminary, nobody's agreed to this, is that in the back of the Center Fire Company, the parking lot, we talked about putting up like a Butler building with 6 or 8 bays, right? That could accommodate these vehicles, other emergency vehicles, and possibly some vehicles from Parks and Rec. That would be, I would think, a $400,000 to $500,000 solution. And it's just not in the cards right now. We're trying to get a budget to come in next year. People are hurting. So
Right.
I would say, yeah, it's a few years down the road, but I think we absolutely need to do that. I don't see this as a permanent solution or a long-term solution. Do you, Jay?
No,
Do you
no,
agree
not
with
at all. And again, one of the reasons for putting it here, Dan, can you just highlight where that light pole is there in our parking lot to the side? Right there. We have surveillance cameras on that look at our building, and they also look at this building here. And they will be able to look, and our vehicles will be secure. They're police vehicles after all. There's equipment in those. So we want to be sure that the structure is secure, and so it's monitored 24/7 by the video cameras. When we put that video system in last year, the property was just being purchased, so we said, look, as long as the town is going to use that to store town equipment, let's keep an eye on it. So there are cameras looking that way. So, and again, if and when two things happen, if they build a storage solution, or if we renovate our building and add covered parking, that building can go away, and it's a portable building. It can be used elsewhere in the town.
I say, what's the
Probably
lifespan on it, Jay?
Put on a new cover. I'm sorry, Susan.
What's the lifespan on this structure?
I don't know. The warranty is probably 5 years for the cover, but the structure itself would be a lot longer than that.
We'd have to replace the cover probably every 4 to 6 years because of degradation from the sun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that just gives you an idea that that's what the vehicles are going through, being left out.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel obligated to ask this. Is there, if we were going to be able to put a building up, a permanent building in the next 5 or 6 years, is there a possibility, and again, I'm just asking because I think I need to ask it, is there a possibility of renting a facility like this, or does that even exist?
We looked at this last year, Harry. I don't know if you remember. We looked at renting spaces somewhere around Brookfield to store equipment. And the problem is every place in Brookfield that you can rent is heated and air conditioned and is really built for businesses. And they want, regardless of whether you're storing vehicles in it or not, they want commercial rates, 20, 25.
I wasn't talking about a structure. I was talking about something like a Durant or a commercial tent and outbuilding facility. And again, I know people are going to ask me this. That's why I'm asking the question.
You mean rent one?
Yes.
We looked at that also, didn't we, Coach, Chief? And that was expensive too.
Well, I don't know that they rent these.
I don't even know if you.
Yeah, I don't think that the cost factor is such that that anybody rents them. I'm not aware of anybody renting them.
Okay.
We looked at storage containers to keep
Yeah.
some stuff in rather than a structure, but this is specifically for those two vehicles.
Yeah. I think it's not a perfect solution, but I think it's a workable one that will help us survive for another few years until we come up with a permanent solution.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really in favor of this, but I know that Jay and the police have been so patient and, you know, they're in such need over there with the facility and everything.
Well, it does come from the outside services fund as well.
Yeah, I know, but even so, but I would not vote against this. I really, you know, we just can't keep spending money, but I understand their need and I understand how patient and they've been with other issues. So,
Yeah, and this has been years we've been discussing this.
no, I understand and I would not vote no against this.
Okay.
Okay,
So, any further questions or comments, Sue, Harry?
no,
Okay,
No,
so I would
no, I
make.
think we need to protect our investments.
Yeah.
And at, you know, $6,000, $7,000 a year, which thank you very much for paying for it out of your service fund, is money well spent, I think.
Yeah, this is
Good
what that
investment.
fund is designed to do, is to pick up these capital costs. It's a capital purchase. And that's what that fund is designed to do, so.
Right. Okay, so I will make a motion that the selectmen approve the amount of $38,500 coming from the police department outside services account and forward this to Board of Finance for approval. Do I have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carries 3-0. Thank you, Chief.
thank you, Jay.
Thank you
Thanks.
all very much. Greatly appreciated. Have a good
Thank you,
night.
sir. Thanks,
Okay,
you too.
Next on the agenda is municipal electric vehicle readiness. Greg Dombrowski is going to give us an overview of what's going on there and what we're being asked to do here. Greg?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, Dan, let it roll, please. So this is about a program that I've learned a lot about over the past 3 or 4 months. I'm going to be very brief tonight. There is a ton of information. I'm just going to hit a few highlights to maybe whet your appetite. So I'm going to give you an overview of what we're trying to do. I'm going to pick out a couple examples on what is being done with regards to planning and zoning and public and destination charging. And I'll give you a couple of examples in a little more detail about some infrastructure guidelines for multi-unit dwelling, cost associated with setting up the infrastructure for non-residential facilities for charging electrical vehicles. And then I'll talk a little bit about the alternative fuel corridor and a letter of support they're asking us to participate in. So with that, we'll get started. And Dan, if you can get that whole first page, actually we'll start there, that's good. So back in 2013, Connecticut was one of 10 states that adopted a commitment to zero emission vehicle discharge, CO2 discharge, zero emissions, and they set some standards 7 years ago. In April of 2020, the Department of Environmental Protection released their roadmap for Connecticut. And this is the program that I'll be talking about tonight on how we're getting educated with that program and how they hope to deploy it across the state. And then July of 2020, they raised the bar to even higher standards of fewer emissions even sooner. So with that, this toolkit program was rolled out in September. Steve asked me to participate in this program, and I have done that. And this is an update for you this evening. So why attend in the middle of the page, if you can scroll down, Dan? It's really learning about what it takes to put together a municipal readiness plan. And again, between tools and resources and reading material and presentations, there is a lot to it. And that's what I've been doing here since September. So on the bottom of this page right here is the 12 module program that I participated in back from September, with the last session being next week, December 10th. And I'll just read through these, just give you a sense for how comprehensive it is. The first was about the economic and community impact for EV. And then they talked about electrifying buses, municipal fleets. Then they talked about how you set them up in parking lots and how the police would enforce this kind of program. Then we talked about zoning and building and permitting. And then we talked about public and destination charging, how you provide this infrastructure in multi-unit dwellings, how you provide it at workplaces, and maybe a new school, and then about transit buses, shuttles, and first responders. So I've not been to every one of these, but I've chosen the ones that I think were appropriate for, maybe what we're trying to learn here. But all this information is online, and I've kept all of the modules so I can refer back to any of them at any time. And they offer a lot of resources for us to go ahead and get our questions answered. Next page, Dan. So the top of this page, Dan, if you can shrink that page down, please, so they can see the whole page. I'm going to talk a little bit about Module 5, Planning and Zoning. And this is the same presentation I made to the Zoning Commission back a couple of weeks ago. And I'll be making the same presentation to the Planning Commission at their January 7th meeting. And the presentations to those commissions, I go in more detail. But first, for this audience and for the Board of Selectmen, I'm going to keep it at a higher level. But every module talks about they have subject matter experts that make a presentation. And in the case for planning and zoning, they had the person come in from the city of Hartford that talked about how they are doing it in their town, how they set their regulations up, how their planning commission created policy statements. And then the town of Middletown had a person come in and talk about the impact of development and how they were successful in implementing this in their planning and zoning regulations. Every course has reading material, and they give you homework before the class. A lot to read, a lot to look at, a lot to think about, and how to engage other boards and commissions. And they provide tools. And you could just look at the kind of tools here. They have different guidelines. They have different things you can read all on the internet to help educate you in preparation for the workshop. And on the next page, Dan, they have resources, and man, are there resources. They talk about deployment policies, guides for planning and creating policy, best practices, and they give examples from what towns have done across Connecticut. In the case of Hartford here, and this is the kind of information I've shared in a little more detail with the Zoning Commission. So again, tons and tons of material. Next page, Dan. I'm sorry you can't read the top of that, but this is Module 7. And Module 7 was really more about setting up the infrastructure in a town, what it takes to create the infrastructure. And here they had somebody from Pura come in and talk to us about the rates and utilities and how you can charge how you can charge the public for charging stations. And then the DOT had a planner talk to us about what they're doing across the state, and I'll get into that in a little more detail. For Module 7, again, they gave us a bunch of pre-reading material. And if you scroll down, Dan, for Module 7, they had some tools for us. And many of these documents, they're hundreds and hundreds of pages, honestly, too much to read in any one sitting. But the resources were phenomenal for this, this particular session. And you could just, peruse through these to see the kind of material that's available if you really want to take this seriously, in Brookfield. I know it's being done so across the state. So a lot of information. Next page, Dan. Here's an example of one document. If you can shrink that down, plug-in electric vehicle charging infrastructure guidelines for multi-unit dwellings. This is about a 90-page document, and it talks about, and what struck me with this is what we're doing in the town center district with apartments going in, condos and townhomes. The one takeaway for us, and what I want to pass on to you tonight, is what other towns have learned from doing this in their apartment and condo units. What they're saying is, if you try to put in this kind of infrastructure, and I'll talk about the cost in a little bit, typically homeowner associations or boards at condos are much more resistant to do it if their condos already exist. The biggest successes they're having across the state are for new facilities, new apartments, new schools being built, and putting the infrastructure in and committing to it before the developer starts their construction. As you can imagine, like with many things else, if you put the infrastructure in while you're building it, it's much cheaper than retrofitting. And that's really true with public utilities. So I know every time now I talk to an applicant or a developer that wants to talk about putting in apartments or condos or anything like a Brookfield Village in our town center district, it'd be really nice if we had zoning regulations, a policy statement that can provide some incentive or encouragement to developers to put that infrastructure in. And there is an economic benefit. They've done plenty of studies that show millennials that move into condos and apartments tend to prefer having this infrastructure available to them, and maybe even slightly higher rents are available. So it's something I hope the zoning commission embraces and looks at. Again, there are incentives that are available, both financial and zoning incentives. And I gave the zoning commission a couple examples of how they can incentivize this kind of infrastructure with their regulations for any new developments coming in. I'll also mention to you, we talked to the project team for the new Huckleberry School, and I was happy to hear that they've reserved some space for this kind of infrastructure for PEVs. And I've encouraged them to give me a call because, as I'll talk about in a couple of minutes, there are many different levels of infrastructure you can put in. And the kind of infrastructure you put in depends on a lot of factors that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Next page, Dan. So for this document, here's an example of the kind of contents that are in a document like I just talked about. I'm not going to go all through this, but a lot of detail, a lot of information. Next page, Dan. Another interesting document that I'll talk about tonight in a little more detail are the costs associated with putting in this infrastructure. And it's you would think it's a pretty straightforward decision to make, but I found out it really isn't, and I'll talk about that in a couple slides. So on this document, the next page is the table of contents for even this kind of discussion. A lot of information. So there's installation costs, there's ongoing cost. There are many factors to consider from both the person or the company or the developer putting in, as well as the user. And I'm going to hit on that over the next couple slides. So this one I found very interesting. I basically clipped a couple different tables out of some of these documents. And there are different levels of charging, level 1, level 2, and fast charging. And you've got to decide which to put in for a couple reasons. The first is if you put in a level 1, you would realize that it takes, you have to put in 1.4 kilowatts of power on a certain vehicle to charge it 1 hour to get 4 miles. Well, if someone's going in to get a Dunkin' Donuts coffee, maybe you want to put a level 1 charging system in. But if someone's going to be at their apartment overnight, maybe that's the appropriate thing, because maybe they want to charge for 20 or 30 miles the next day. But if someone's going to be in and out of a grocery store real quick, maybe they want a fast charge. So maybe they want to get 24 miles, and it'll take a 20-minute charge to get them 24 miles. So you got to think about the different charging level you want to install. And of course, each of those mean you have to have a different power supply. This is electricity coming off the grid. Now, the other factor there is the bottom of this page, and that's the cost. So a level 1 charger on national average is about $1,500. The range is $0 to $3,000, but that's a very slow charge. If you want a fast charge, because you want to get in and out of a grocery store, you got to get 50 or 90 miles. That's a large investment. We're talking up to $51,000 for a fast charging station. So a lot of factors to consider. And here's one example or a couple examples of the kind of considerations that have to be made. Next page, Dan. So on top of that, the top of this page is a snapshot from the Federal Highway Administration on their alternative fuel corridor program. And you can go look at that at your leisure. But what this is a program that's designed by the FHWA to establish a national network of basically charging stations. And luckily for us, Connecticut is in that network. And on the bottom of this page, if you go down, Dan, I'll talk a little bit about where we are in Connecticut. The reason why anybody would want to consider being in this corridor program are a few reasons. And it wouldn't cost us anything, by the way. It reduces range anxiety. You can imagine with an EV car, if you've got to get so many miles and you've only got so much left in your battery, you want to know where that next charging station is. So to be in this EV corridor, it just gives people a reason to use the corridor because they know a charging station is nearby. The federal government will put in signage on these roads telling you where the next charging station is, for example, and it'll be listed on basically a map where people would know, from a website, where all the charging stations are across the country. There's currently three charging station areas along Route 7, Darien, Danbury, and New Milford. And they all want to be part of this fuel corridor program and be accepted by the federal government. Right now, there's 2 EV approved corridors in the state, one on 84 and one on 95. And we're trying to get Route 7 approved in that corridor all the way from Norwalk into Massachusetts. So one application's already gone in for a part of that corridor. Another one is going in February of 2021. And since Brookfield, Route 7 goes through Brookfield, we've been asked to support the program, and they would like us to submit a letter of support. And that letter of support is on the next page. It's a template that I'd like, the Board of Selectmen to consider. They would like that letter from us if we're going to send it sometime by early January, because they're packaging this whole thing up for a February submission to Washington, to the Federal Highway Administration. So again, I'm sorry, this is very brief. There's a lot to it, but I hope this at least gets your curiosity up, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Greg, you said very quickly there was no cost to us, and yet the stations cost the 3,000 or 51,000, depending on the size of it.
Yeah, that's.
Is there really no cost to us?
Well, to be in the program, I guess let me talk about that a bit. For infrastructure to be put in with private developers, they would have to pay for that infrastructure. To be a part of the corridor, there has to be those different levels of chargers have to be within a certain distance of Route 7. And until I've not read the application to know what the town's commitment is, but I've been told they're looking just for our support. And what I was told for this, there's no financial commitment to putting in a level of support. What I do know is for the corridor to be approved, either the state or the towns, and maybe it's going to be the DOT, let's say at a park and ride, which is a state-owned piece of property, maybe that's where the charging station would go. I know to be an approved corridor, the requirements are pretty stringent. Again, you have to have certain levels of chargers within so many miles within the corridor. You can't be 50 miles off, for example. So all they're asking for us now is a letter of support, no financial commitment.
No obligation.
No financial obligation at this time. This is just
But
saying.
by, but at this time, are we committed to in the future?
Not with this, not simply with this letter. This is just a letter of support. And Sue, I don't know enough about this. This one just got sprung on me a few weeks ago. But I do know that they're not asking for funding, any town funding.
No,
Yeah, so we have-
I do support it. I love the idea of people coming this way. I know people with electric cars that are cautious about how far they'll travel because, you know, they do need to be cautious about that and where they're going to go to get recharged again. No, I'm all for it. I just don't want to commit any funds at this time.
Yes.
I agree with you, Sue. I think this is obviously, this is a portent of the future and that we are going to have to change our zoning. And I think especially in apartment buildings and any developments, that it's going to become a requirement of zoning that you do put in some fast charging stations for your residents. And I think the developers will want to do that to attract those residents. Electric vehicles are getting much, much more popular. They're coming down in cost. And I think this is what's going to happen in the future. And I think we should support it. And I think if all the towns along Route 7 support this enthusiastically, there's probably a good chance that the DOT or the feds would give us money to help make this corridor a reality. That's my
Yeah,
guess.
that'd be great. Yeah.
Harry, you have any comments, concerns? You're on mute, Harry.
Sorry, thank you. You know, I think I would vote yes when it becomes mandatory. I'm not on the same level of support with this that you and Sue are. So I would probably vote no here, but if it became mandatory, I would. So.
Yeah, the nice thing about this is we're showing support and then we can see what the financials look like. And that'll be a couple years down the road, at least, I think. They're just looking for support right now, that
Right. No.
towns are interested in supporting electric vehicles. And
I know
this-
we even talked in some of our budget meetings about potential of municipal vehicles, you know,
Yeah.
becoming electric in a couple of years.
Yeah, if you remember 3.5 years ago, we made an application under the Volkswagen lawsuit for funding for EV charging station here at Town Hall. With
Yeah.
Volkswagen, I forget how many billion they put out there. And one of the things you could apply for was to have a charging station installed. And we haven't heard back yet, and who knows? I may be dead before we hear back from them, but.
Well, and I think at this point, they're only looking for our support, but no money, and there's no obligation of any money.
Correct.
I think it's a worthwhile project for them to pursue and hopefully they can get it.
Yeah.
Whether it's our town or a town close by, at least
Yeah,
we're
I
supporting
agree.
it.
I agree. Okay, any further comments, questions, suggestions?
No.
No? Okay, having said that, I will make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve the first selectman sending a letter to the Connecticut Federal Highway Administration supporting the Route 7 alternate fuel corridor project. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
A second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those no?
No,
You're a no, Harry? Okay.
yes.
Okay, great. It passes 2-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the streetscape phase 4, and Greg once again is on twice
Yep.
because he likes to be
got
on TV.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Can you state your
so-
name for the record?
I'm not telling you. Streetscape, I think we've talked about streetscape once or twice over the past few years, haven't we?
We have.
So here we are, streetscape phase 4, talking about it again, and there's a couple reasons why. So what I'd like to do this evening is just give you an overview on all 5 phases, just to update you. I'll talk about the funding and scope history of phase 4. And in that, there's a couple of important letters that were sent in May and August that I'll talk about quickly. And then I want to talk about a conceptual design, construction cost estimate, and a total project cost estimate for what is now a newly thought about and scoped phase 4. So with that, we'll go to the next page. And let's get all that on one page, Dan, if you can. So this is my go-to slide. Phase 1 was done in 2017, phase 2 last summer. Phase 3 will be done in the summer, spring of 2021. That's 2021. That's moving along very nicely. The bid package will be posted probably in a month, maybe 5 weeks, and that project will be done in the spring or summer of 2021. Phase 5 is also a commitment to fund from the DOT, and that can be, I'm hoping to get that done next year. It might be the summer of 22. Phase 4. When we first talked about phase 4, it was connecting phase 1 all the way up to Newberry Village. When we talked about that a couple of years ago, we've talked to the developers that shows that gap area, and that's the Enclave project. And we had the understanding that that would be done first, and then we would just put the sidewalks connecting phase 1 to them, then all the way up to Newberry Village. That's the way we've been thinking about phase 4 for really over a year and a half. So, and I think there's going to be a future. It might be a phase 6 along Laurel Hill Road if those developments come in as some people are hoping. So that's a quick overview on our downtown. Next page. So let's talk about the history of phase 4. Over a year and a half ago, we had no funding for phase 4, so the project sat there dormant. We knew we wanted to do it, we had no funding. Then a TAP grant, a federal TAP grant became eligible, and we applied. And at a meeting on August 5th of 2019, after the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance approved the project, we had a town meeting for a $2.4 million project, with the town portion being $480,000. That project was scoped as I just described it, with no sidewalk or streetscape in front of that frontage for the Enclave, which is several hundred linear feet. And then we sat there from through the end of 2019 to early 2020, and that federal money never got released from Washington because the infrastructure bill was never passed. So even though we were given the grant or awarded the grant locally by the COG, and we were voted #1 in our region, the funding never came from Washington, so nothing ever happened with that grant, therefore the project. And then in early 2020, we learned about a LOTSIP program that was a solicitation was, we were invited to send a proposal on, and we asked the DOT that even though we had it approved from TAP funding, could we still apply for a LOTSIP grant because the TAP money isn't released? They said, sure, go ahead. So in May, the Board of Selectmen approved a $3 million project with a $450,000 town match. Basically, we sharpened our pencils, we looked at the project closer, and it was more expensive, but the town match was a little less. LOTSIP funding is much more generous than TAP funding. And then there was, on May 13th, there was the Board of Finance approval. And Steve can talk about the town portion being less than what the Board of Selectmen approved. And then we were basically given the award or given the approval by WestCog, but we had to rescind the TAP grant. And Steve sent a letter to the DOT on August 21st, rescinding the TAP grant. And then here we are today with another change, and it's the most important one during this whole period, is we've learned that the Enclave project really has not gained any traction and really isn't very close at all to being complete, certainly not before we can do this project with lots of funding. So we rescoped the project, and it now includes the entire length from phase 1 all the way to Newberry Village, including the frontage in front of the Enclave. So I'm here tonight to ask the Board of Selectmen for your approval for phase 4 with the larger scope of work. It's now up to $3.6 million. The town portion does not increase because all the extra costs are LOTSIP eligible.
So
So
Greg, can you talk a little bit about, you and I have discussed this, with switching from TAP to LOTSIP. We got a lot of pushback from the state DOT to stay with TAP because it would fit into their plans and they had it all lined up and they finally got the approvals. And we looked at it, and Greg, the additional cost under TAP would be about $750,000, right?
that's correct. And there's 3 or 4 reasons why not only we, but every other town in the state prefers LOTSIP funding over TAP funding. The TAP grant only is a 80% program. The town's got to put up 20%. So right off the top, you got to pay 20% of the total cost. The second factor is you are required to hire a full-time inspector. They must be on the job site every minute of every day. And the paperwork, you'll go blind looking at the paperwork they have to do. We don't have to do that under LOTSIP. So the cost, for example, for Streetscape Phase 2 for our inspector was $120,000. This phase, by the way, Phase 4 would be our largest streetscape phase out of all 5. It will probably be $250,000 for an inspector for Phase 4.
Minimum.
And I'll talk about the complexities with Phase 4 in the next couple slides. The other factor with TAP is the DOT gets a piece of the action. They get to charge the project their time, and the town has to pick up 20% of that. And none of those costs get hit to the town with a LOTSIP program. So you add those 3 or 4 factors up, and it is easily $750,000. So with that in mind, Steve and I tried for over a month to gracefully walk away from the TAP grant that we were approved. And first the DOT said, no, you're approved. You must take that money. You're not going to get LOTSIP money. And we spent 3 or 4 weeks, several phone calls with the DOT and with WestCog, and they finally said, okay, but it was like pulling teeth. And the reason it is, they've already lined up our project with the federal government. And to go back and pull a project and get another one that's eligible under very narrow guidelines and criteria would have it cost them a lot of time and money. And if you don't spend this money, you lose it. So the DOT really pushed us to keep that TAP grant, and we said no.
Yeah, we had a what I would call a come to Jesus meeting with the state. And I said to him, there is no way that I can, and Greg and I can, even consider using TAP when LOTSIP is available. I said, if you can make the TAP grant as cost effective as LOTSIP, then we'll consider staying in the program. But they couldn't do that. And I said, I can't justify spending an additional $750,000 because the state DOT finds it easier to do from their standpoint. So we went back and forth, and they, at the end of the meeting, they said, well, next time we do this, we're going to pass rules that if you accept TAP, you can only use TAP in the future, even if another program comes up. So they're probably going to call it the Brookfield rule.
You've made a name for us.
Yeah, and it was very difficult, and Greg did a great job on this, and we just can't justify spending another $750,000 to keep the state happy. If it was exactly the same cost, I'd say, oh, okay, it's more difficult. It's a more difficult program to administer. There's a lot more details.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So now that the enclave is going to be included where they would have been paying for it themselves,
Yeah.
That portion of it, can we get that back when the enclave is built?
Well, yeah, we possibly could. You know, we do have the ordinance that allow us charge up to 50% of a given project to the developers, the owners of the property, abutting the improvement that we made. But if you remember, we haven't charged any other development any charges, with the exception of Station Road, where Brookfield Village wanted us to extend down Station Road, and they paid for
Yeah.
half of it. But that's the only time, but that was outside the purview of the project. So when Brookfield Village came to us, they said, can you do it as part of your project, and we'll pay half. That's for about a
Right.
50-foot section, Greg, 50, 75 feet that we
Yes.
extended that.
Yeah.
So we've not charged anyone else because we want to build the town. We want to build the town center, and we want to make it attractive for developers. So going back and charging one developer, in my mind, seems unfair, right? We had
Well,
thought
if
that,
they're- mm,
well, the requirement is if you develop, you have to put this in now, right? But I think to be consistent, it does us no good to build this, a sidewalk to nowhere. We have to get it up to Newberry Village.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to have sidewalk, then 250 feet of no sidewalk, and then sidewalk again
Right.
up to Newberry.
But,
So I
but
think this is,
Steve, isn't the difference that the other projects that are part of the streetscapes and the build
Mhm.
did not offer to pay for that, for the sidewalk or the streetscapes on their property, where this one did?
yeah, they did.
So would this, if they don't start, if they don't start their project till after the streetscapes is in, why wouldn't we collect the money that it costs to put it in? I mean,
We
they've
could
already-
possibly do that, but then,
part of them getting the agreement was they were going to pay for that part of it.
well, there's no agreement. I
Well,
mean,
not
the agreement was they would put it in.
Right.
It seems to me, I could be wrong, that it seems to me unfair to point out one developer, only one, to pay for a sidewalk in front of their property when we're not charging anyone else. And I
But they
think,
did offer.
I would
They
agree.
were-
They
They
did
were
offer.
going to.
right, they did offer. We can go back and talk to them. But my feeling is that this Enclave project is a non-starter.
Mhm.
They've been looking at it for 7 years, and Greg's had some ongoing discussions with the developers, and it just seems to be going around in circles.
Yeah. COVID is not helping, I'm sure.
And I'm sure COVID is not helping, but they haven't moved, they haven't done a single thing as far as wetlands, zoning,
Mhm.
anything, right, Greg? They haven't come in with anything,
There's
except the
no,
initial,
that's right. There's no approved plans, I don't believe.
yeah, I don't think so either.
And they haven't gotten to a point where they're going to be asking for any kind of tax
No, we're not gonna. do-
benefits, because that's something that maybe we could,
Right,
if
No.
there was, rescind them
think-
or something.
yeah, I don't think we should offer them a tax abatement.
No.
Our criteria for that is you've got to be bringing something spectacular here, right? And something that's over and above. We gave Brookfield Village a tax abatement before we took office, but they were the first in. And
Mhm.
the downtown, it was a much bigger risk for them to come into the town center than it is for other developers now that Brookfield Village is, again, putting up their next 2 buildings. The
Mhm. Yeah.
streetscapes in, it looks really nice. It's much more
Yeah.
attractive than it was. So we gave that abatement offer to Brookfield Village 6, 7 years ago, right? And
Mhm.
I don't see a need to do that right now. I think we talked about that. Remember the guys on Laurel Hill wanted an abatement, and we said,
Mhm.
we just don't see it right now.
Right, all right, okay. All right,
Next page, we'll get through this. We good? Move on?
yeah,
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, so this is the letter from Steve to the Board of Finance. I talked about the May 4th letter. That's just in your package for your information to kind of refresh your memory. I've already talked about the numbers. Next page. This is the letter Steve sent to Westcog, then was forwarded to the DOT, saying basically we're rescinding our TAP grant application even after we were approved. And this is what started the whole debate on, no, you can't, you must take that money. So that's that letter. And so phase 4 is going to have a sidewalk on the west side all the way up. from the Agora all the way to Newberry Village with one crossing that I'll talk about in the next couple pages. There'll still be lights, sidewalk lights on both sides. We're going to be adding a shoulder. What's very unique, or I shouldn't say unique, one of the reasons why this project is the most expensive of all phases, not only is because it's the longest run, but because we have to add 4 retaining walls. And it adds $300,000 or $400,000 to the cost of the project. This project in some areas has a very narrow right-of-way. And for us to get a sidewalk, maybe a multi-use trail, as we want to extend that into New Milford, and brick pavers and shoulders and a 11 or 12-foot lane, there's going to be the widening or the right-of-way acquisition and a lot of site work on this project. I will tell you, the numbers I presented you tonight are estimates. Nothing's been designed, nothing's been surveyed, and I believe we have enough contingency in this to cover this project, because the last thing I want to do is come back and ask for more money. That's not an easy thing to do in this town. So I'll talk about the money in the next couple slides, but this is going to be a continuation of our streetscape design that we all know by now. So the next page. The retaining wall is going to have to meet DOT standards. It may not be the most beautiful thing, but it's going to have to be within DOT standards. If we choose to upgrade it to be more decorative in some way, that's a decision we can make, but those dollars will be on the town. So there will be 4 retaining walls. We are going to have that flashing beacon, as we now have 2. By the time this project goes in, we're going to have 5 in our downtown. And this will be adding another one that I'll show on the next couple pages. Next page. So this is the beginning of the Agora on the left. And you can identify the properties. I mean, the Enclave is there. Across the street is Green Acres. There's Riverview on the lower right-hand corner. There's the crosswalk we're proposing to put in. Now, I will say that if Green Acres and or the Enclave move forward with their projects, we can alter this design, because their plan is to put in a 4-way intersection with turning lanes into both of those developments. That does not exist now. So this is going to be a little tricky project when it comes to timing. We'd hate to spend this money, then tear it out to do something different, to add turning lanes when those projects come in. So just like we're facing this challenge with phase 5 in the grocery store project, it's a matter of timing and working together with the developers. And Tony Lucera might be on this call or might be on this meeting, I'm not sure, but I talk to Tony all the time for both the grocery store project and the Enclave. And doing this in a coordinated way will save us money and time. So we'll be working on this one very carefully in that regard. Next page. And that's just a continuation from the previous page all the way to Newberry Village with another crosswalk. So you can see here, the plan only is to have a sidewalk on one side of the road, and it's because of money. There simply isn't enough right-of-way and room to work because of all the elevation and grade issues. So there'll be a sidewalk on one side. Next slide. This is the cost estimate, and I won't go through all these numbers, but you can just look at retaining wall 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, there's 5 retaining walls. Look at the dollars we're talking about just for retaining walls. Okay, this is a serious project with a lot of site work. You can also look on the bottom and look at the contingency numbers, 25%. So these numbers, I think, have enough contingency in them, but I got to tell you, I'm nervous about this one. It's a big project, and we've got some work to do. Again, this is all preliminary, but all the takeoffs you see in the detailed numbers up above are all takeoffs and actual measurements, and you do what you can, and then you put in a lot of contingency. Next page.
Hey, Craig, I had one quick question. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
On that last page.
Yep.
The contingency fund, underneath the contingency, where'd that go? Underneath the contingent, incidental, 25%. Can you, is that just another contingency fund or?
No, no. Incidentals are testing, materials inspection, engineering, those kind of things.
Okay, okay,
Look right away, $80,000, utilities, $200,000. We have to move a lot of poles.
right.
Okay, next page. So only certain costs are eligible under LOTSIP, some are not. So you look at that previous slide and you add on other costs that are not eligible. All of the construction and contingency and testing inspections are eligible. So is the right-of-way. Utilities are only 50% eligible. The town's got to pick up the other 50%. Design engineering is not eligible. That's $250,000. And construction management in my time, I will have put 3.5 years into this project. By the time we do it in 2022, I'm estimating to be 100 grand. So there's the $3.6 million in total. There's 450 from the town and 3.1 million from LOTSIP. So there we are, Streetscape Phase 4. That's all I have. I'll take any questions.
When do we find out if we get the LOTSIP grant?
We've been approved, Sue.
We have been approved. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
What we have to do though is because we're asking for more money, I would go to a TAG meeting to recommend Brookfield be approved for the extra money. That would go to Westcog for the board of directors, Steve and the other first selectmen to vote for that extra money. But I feel very confident based on all the work we've done the past 6 months that we're going to get that approval.
Yeah, that approval, Westcog has changed the way they approve these projects because in the past, they would only approve projects up to the amount of LOTSIP funding that Westcog received. But what they found is many projects just get bogged down and never get done. So they end up sitting with 30–40% of the LOTSIP funding not being used. And the state chided them last year and threatened them, threatened us, Westcog, with not giving us any more LOTSIP because we weren't using the funding that we already were awarded. So we've changed the process, and what we're doing is we're approving projects, and it's a first come, first serve. So if we get our project in and approved, we get our money. And they'll keep on doling it out that way until the total LOTSIP amount is used up. So I am very confident they will approve the change in this.
When did we receive the LOTSIP grant?
We applied for it. If you go back a few slides, almost to the beginning.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
Let-
Scope
let-
history. So
yeah,
we
let me-
rescinded it in August,
We rescinded the TAP grant.
right?
And we
So it
first
had to have
applied-
happened after August 21st.
Hang on, Sue, I'm waiting to get back there. Here we are.
Yep, there you are.
So we first applied for it in May of 2020 for
Mhm.
LOTSIP
Hmm.
with no enclave. Now we're
Yep.
saying, well, the enclave's not happening, so we put in more money, another 600,000 to do the sidewalk in front of the enclave. So we were approved back in May.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize they gave it to us. I thought we were
Well,
we
rescinding
applied,
the TAP in the hopes of getting LOTSIP. Okay, all right. I didn't know we were,
already
okay, thank you.
approved.
Thank you.
I wasn't going to give up TAP until I knew I had LOTSIP.
Well, that was a concern. Yeah. Well, although we just did that for the monies on the streetscape, the Greenway, and now we're going to do the town hall, right? Wasn't that something that we kind of flipped over to?
Well, that was steep.
That was steep grant.
Mm-hmm.
That was steep.
Yep. Yep.
So we kept that.
Okay.
So we're asking the board tonight to, in effect, reapprove the original $450,000 or 15% with a max of 450,000. And the reason we're asking that is when the Board of Finance approved this, the letter that went to Westcog in support of this project had the wrong information in it. It had 15% or 375,000, and that's what the Board of Finance approved. But the original request was from the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Finance was 450,000. And so we're just asking to reaffirm that it's no more, it's the same amount of money that we approved previously. And
Right.
we're asking the Board of Finance to simply correct what the mistake that we made. We just
Yeah.
had the wrong numbers in there, and we pulled the numbers from the wrong piece of paper.
Right, yeah. So this was, we had approved it already.
Our letter to the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen approved
Back in May.
15% or 450,
Yeah, on May 4th,
right?
we approved it. Okay,
And then the Board of Finance approved it, but they approved 15% or 375 because the letter to Westcog had the wrong amount in it.
I see. Okay.
Okay, any further questions, Harry?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
So I would make a motion that the selectmen approve the town would commit for the lot zip grant, a matchup not to exceed 15% or 450,000 of the total cost of the project phase 4, contingent upon approval by the Board of Finance and town meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Steve, just a clarification, and that's for 3.6 million in total, correct?
Right. I would make an amendment to my motion for a total of $3.6 million with 450,000 max coming from the town. Thank you,
Yes.
Greg. That's a very good point. It's important. So my amended motion, any further discussion? Okay.
Town meeting, it would be scheduled for when?
Probably February, March. We have to see what goes on with the pandemic.
Okay.
Do you have
Right.
to get to the Board of Finance first or not? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we have to go to the Board of Finance first.
Right.
So this
If
will go
it,
to the
yeah,
Board of
and if they
Finance this
approve and
month.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yep, I didn't know what the timing was. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
The Board of Finance has to reconfirm their approval at the
Mhm.
right amount, and then we would set up a town meeting.
Yeah.
You know, we were able to vote in person in November, so I think we will be able to set up a town meeting. If we did it like at the high school and separated people out, I think it would be fine. And this has always gotten almost unanimous approval from the residents. So I think the town would support it. And I don't think we're going to get 600 people. I don't think this is super controversial,
Mhm.
right? I think it's something people want to do.
Yeah, finish up the project. This is exciting.
Right. So having said that, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, carries 3-0. Greg, once again, thank you very much. You did a great job on this.
Mhm.
Thank you. Good night.
Oh, you're leaving? Why are you leaving?
No, I'm gonna get a glass of wine and listen.
Okay.
Thank you for all your hard work, Greg.
I mean,
My
this is-
pleasure.
This is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Getting
the
he,
next-
he got us the town hall money too. Nice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's moving along very nicely. So announcements. Coronavirus, I sent out a code red last week. I won't go through all the details, but just the highlights. You know, we have a lot of confirmed cases. As of December 3rd, we had 502 cases. 449 of those were confirmed and 53 were probable. Total people tested in town to date is 6,400. For the number of cases reported in the 2 weeks ending 11/28 was 116. In the first 3 days of December, we had 27 cases reported. So this is going through the roof. It's really taking off. And Doc Sullivan tells me, and I agree with him, that because of Thanksgiving, we're probably going to see that rise dramatically. I hope not, but I think it will.
Does he think any of this number is Thanksgiving already or not yet?
No, not yet, I don't think,
Mhm.
because it was the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
So maybe one case or two cases. I think they usually say 7 to 10 days before people start testing positive. Unfortunately, we do have 13 deaths today, and we're hoping that does not rise. For HIPAA reasons, we can't discuss who they are or where they're located. Again, primarily, it's people over 70 who are losing their lives to this virus, and it's very, very sad.
That's people from Brookfield?
People from Brookfield, 13
How
people in
about
Brookfield.
hospitalizations?
I'm sorry, say again, Harry?
How about hospitalizations in the last week or two?
Those get a little bit softer because the hospital doesn't report. It's our contact tracing that does that tracking. But we did have, I think it was 13 people in the hospital last Wednesday. I think that was a number.
Okay.
So we'll continue to send out. I think people are receiving the code reds positively, and I think we don't want them to get code red fatigue. That's why we're not sending them out daily. I know some towns have been sending something out daily, and I know one town where people have unsubscribed because they don't want to get this every single day. It's just too much. So I think we'll continue to do that on a week or bi-weekly basis as things move along. I think from now through Christmas, the end of the year, we'll probably do it weekly because people do want to know where this is going, particularly with the holiday coming up.
Right. Please, yeah, please do.
Yeah.
People are finding it very informative. Thank you.
Yeah, and we encourage everyone to sign up. All you have to do is go to the town website. On the bottom of the homepage, you'll see Code Red. Click on that, and you can receive email, text, voicemail, whatever you want. You can pick one or all methods to be communicated with.
Sorry.
On a happier note, the 6th annual Brookfield Police Department Toy Drive is Saturday, December 12th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 84 Federal Road in the parking lot next to Five Guys Cold. So it's moved across the street. It used to be where the new Newtown Savings Bank is. And this is a great program. Brookfield residents have just come out in droves to support this. It is so nice to see how many people in Brookfield, you know, they drive by. Last year I saw one guy, he drove by and he just went into Kohl's and bought 2 toys and brought them over. And he said, I'm glad I saw this. So we're looking to do that. You can also drop off, if you can't be there on the 12th, you can drop off unwrapped presents at the police station. And it's a great toy drive. So let's continue to do what we've done in the past and support that. Let's Light Up the Town is a festive and safe way for our community to celebrate the holiday season. Join the fun by decorating your home with an outdoor light display to others and enjoy the comfort of their cars as they drive by. Full details are available on the town website, and they're probably going to be giving out some awards as who is the most popular. So let us know if you're decorating your house. Greg has put this together, supporting your local businesses by voting for your favorite decorated storefront. All locally owned retail businesses and restaurants are encouraged to be part of it in Brookfield, and they're eligible, and cash prizes will be given to the 5 best decorated storefronts. Again, the full details are on the town website, and we encourage everyone to vote for your favorite displays in the businesses and to frequent those businesses. Support our local businesses. Go to them, buy coffee, buy a pizza, buy some food, buy whatever they're selling. Coffee with the Community will be held on Monday, December 21st at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. Residents are welcome to join the meeting by YouTube for viewing or join via Zoom with call-in with any questions, comments, or concerns for the selectmen. Links for access and call-in will be on the meeting agenda that we'll post on the town website. We did receive 1 correspondence from Newberry Village regarding blight, and we can discuss that if you want to in more detail, but this is going pretty long. So let's move on to Marcia and get an update on the budget. Marcia?
Okay, the 2020, the financial statements, I just have got to finish the MD&A that they'll be out by December 31st. 2021, there are no surprises, a few things up, a few things under. I'm not asking you to approve any COVID stuff this month because we're pretty much caught up. We found we may get some more money from the CRF funding for after June 30th. But right now we're all within our budget, that we've got a big COVID reserve. So there's nothing that I know of to lose sleep about.
Okay, good. Does anybody have, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question for Marcia? With voting, you know, we had to hire more people. We had the postage going out. The state had originally said that they were going to give us all sorts of money. Where are we with that? Are they giving us any money to
Well,
help offset that?
they did give us what they said that they would give us. It was around 12,000 of cash and in-kind services. And we didn't really know the allocation. We've gotten a few $1,000s from them. So the in-kind services, I'm not really sure what they were. That probably the box out front where we put the ballots is one. But we have covered it with our contingency. But I know of no more money coming in.
Okay.
And we're
Any
still
idea what
waiting
the
on.
cost was to us?
I'm sorry, could you say again?
Any idea what the cost was for the town?
Yes, that I do. That let me just look here at that report. Let me find the right screen. So if we look at the budget to actual, the town clerk report, it was about $38,000. And that's extra ballots because they were told, I forgot the percent, something like 90% of the registered voters they had to print ballots for.
Yeah, we bought, no, it was 80%. We printed out 80% of the total population of voters in ballots. And we did that because in the presidential primaries, 80% of the people voted by mail. So we wanted to be prepared if 80% did the same thing in the election. That did not happen. Only about, I think, 40 some odd percent voted by mail, but we had to be ready for that. So.
And so that was the portion that was the town clerk. That was the biggest portion. The registrars had some extra costs, but they covered it with some savings from one less vote than what they had expected so far. But if we get more votes than they expect, those costs won't be covered.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next, any questions for Marcia? No? Harry?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. The next item is the Candlewood Lake waterline assessments. Dan, can I share my screen?
Yep, you've got access.
Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen. There we go. So I had a number of conversations with members of the Board of Finance. We talked to them. I don't know how to make this a little smaller, but let me just move this over. We talked to them and I had numerous conversations with members of the boards of finance on how we should apply the assessment. And the thinking was that we should probably have the town absorb more of the cost of the water line because the town and the school will be the single largest user of the water line. And in talking to members of the Board of Finance, Mark Mulvaney and Glenn Rooney, Mark had suggested that we absorb 92% of the cost. We originally were at 60%, and I think that's a reasonable thing. And you can see here in doing that, this column right here, estimated total payment, this is what the cost per property would be. And it's become a very reasonable amount. And also for those properties, the orange properties are the ones that have high levels of salt and chlorides or very close to the allowable levels. All of these right now are over the allowable limits. In the orange, it's 7 properties. For those properties, we can include them in the project, and the town, we get 25% forgiveness on the cost of installing the water line. And the town would absorb 50% of the cost of the hookup. And this is what we estimate based on $8,000 per house cost, what it would cost per year to be part of the water line and hook up. So for example, if you look at 93 Candlewood Lake Road, the total cost between the assessment for the water line and the cost to hook up to their house is about $326 per year, which becomes a much more reasonable amount for these property owners to absorb. And the town portion would be about $73,000 per year, which is up about $15,000 from what we originally estimated with the 60%, if I remember correctly. So I think that this is a very fair and equitable way to allocate these costs and meet the needs of all these 7 houses that have high chlorides and salts in the water, while still bringing water up to the school. So what I would like to do, any questions, concerns, issues on that?
No, I'm fine with this.
You're fine with that? Okay, Sue, you have any?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I would make a motion that the selectmen, we have a slightly different wording based on Tom Beecher's input, that the selectmen adopt the revised assessment schedule subject to final approval after a public hearing and schedule a virtual public hearing on Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. So we have to have the public hearing and then another Board of Selectmen meeting to actually adopt the assessment. Is that correct, Tom? Am I saying that properly? You're on mute, Tom. Find the mute button.
Didn't say anything important anyway.
Yeah,
That's correct. Right now, what you're doing is you're approving a set of numbers to mail out to the property owners and for the public hearing.
right.
And then you'll have the public hearing. You may not change those numbers after the public hearing, but obviously you want to have the public hearing first and then finalize the numbers.
Yeah, okay. So we have the public hearing, do the presentation. Greg has done that in the past. He knows the water line as well or better than anyone. And then entertain questions, public comment, then have a Board of Selectmen meeting and formally adopt the assessment table. Yes, Greg.
Can I ask a question of Tom? Tom, all of the numbers are just estimates. We don't know the actual cost until we get the bids back and we complete the project and all change orders and everything else. So is the actual assessment going to be based on these estimates, or is it going to be based on the actual numbers after construction?
Well, we'll take a look at that. I mean, I suppose the Board of Selectmen doesn't have to do the final numbers until later.
I think what we could do is adopt it. This is an estimate and we would adopt it as percentages of the final total cost to each property. Could we do that, Tom?
I'm not sure you can. I think you have to have the actual numbers because there's a right of appeal from
Okay.
final assessments.
Okay. So if let's say the assessment numbers were far off or were over what we have in this table, we would just have to have another public hearing.
Yeah, if they were substantial, yeah, if they were substantially different.
Yeah,
But it
okay.
depends.
So we have room to move there if the numbers do change. Obviously, if they go down, we'll want to lower these. If they go up, we'll have to readjust them. Okay, that makes sense.
Steve, I have a quick question for Tom. Tom, just how do we define substantial? I mean, what is,
Percentage?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I think we're leaving ourselves a little vulnerable by just saying if it's substantial.
Well, I think the point that Steve was making was whether or not we'd have another public hearing.
Right.
So right
And I
now,
think-
we're talking about 3 phases. Tonight, you're approving a set of numbers and assessments that you want to move forward to the public hearing, assuming that those are likely to be numbers in the final analysis.
Right.
But Greg's point was we need to get the actual bid numbers because that might influence the overall cost of this project and therefore how much will be pushed back on the property owners. If we're talking about only $20,000 more in total cost for the project, that's not going to be substantial. That requires another public hearing.
Yeah, and the town could probably just absorb that 20,000. But I think I think the town though, tell me if I'm right, Tom, that to be perfectly fair, the Board of Selectmen, once we have the final numbers and we know what the costs are and what the actual assessment per house is going to be and what the cost of the hookups is going to be to each of the eligible houses, that we have another special meeting and put that out there and finalize the assessment. Can we do that?
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
That would be my suggestion. Wouldn't you think, Harry?
Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah.
good approach. Yeah.
Sue, you agree also?
Yes.
Okay. So having made that motion, I suggest that we, having the hearing on December 22nd and a Board of Selectmen meeting immediately after. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Harry seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Oh,
Harry?
I am sorry. Yes, I.
Harry's an aye also. Okay, that carries 3-0. Okay. Thank you very much. Tom, thanks for the clarification there. That was very helpful. Okay, so I would make a motion that the selectmen approve the items on the consent agenda. Should we, I think we should just walk through them really quickly. Is that okay with you guys?
Please.
2019 Tree City USA annual application. We do this every year to be a Tree City member. It's a good thing, we take care of our trees. We are looking to retain Cohen and Wolf PC as special legal counsel for the affordable housing moratorium pursuant to General Connecticut Statute Section 830G-I. Our moratorium expires next July, and we're going to reapply for it. We used Robin Kahn 5 years ago when we originally applied for it. She's an expert in 830G, and we do need her help in putting together the affordable moratorium. The application to the state is rather complicated and detailed, and you have to get it perfectly right. So,
And she is with Cohen and Wolf?
yes, she is. Yes, she is. And then we have the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes of November 2nd and November 23rd. I reviewed them. I didn't see any changes. Does anybody else have any concerns or issues with those minutes?
No.
Okay. Employee changes. We are going to be hiring a new officer, John Scholkamp. I hope I pronounced that correctly, as a police officer. And we did have 2 retirements, George Grumman and Sharon Santee. Both of the Brookfield Library retired after many, many, many years of service to the library. We wish them well.
Special thanks
we
to
have,
them.
yeah, we have 4 driveway bonds, 12 Lexington, 31 Powder, Horn Hill, Granite Drive, Brookfield Heights, and 12 Beech Tree Road. We want to release those bonds. And then the Planning Commission wants us to release Granite Drive, Brookfield Heights, final bond of $26,400. Each of the driveway bonds is $750. And that's the whole consent agenda. Do I have a second to accept the consent agenda?
I'll second it.
Sue seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Carries 3-0. Additional monthly agenda items. I would make a motion that the selectmen appoint Anna Elise D'Souza to fill a vacancy as an alternate member on the Historic District Commission for a term of 12/7/20 to 2/7/22. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
You can say, I don't know her, so you can.
Mhm. I didn't know if you were on mute or not there, Harry, if you were saying something. Yep.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Carries 3-0. I would make a motion that the selectmen appoint Casey Samir to fill a vacancy on the Library Board of Trustees for a term of 12/7/20 to 2/5/24, as recommended by the DTC. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sue seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries 3-0. That the selectmen appoint Scott Dale to fill an alternate vacation on the Planning Commission for a term of 12/7/20 to 2/5/24, as recommended by the DTC. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then I make a motion that the selectmen approve the 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting schedule as noted. I won't go through every date, it's in here. I didn't see any problems or issues with it.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Harry, thank you. Any concerns, issues with the schedule for Board of Selectmen meetings? No?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's it for the Board of Selectmen.
I have one thing, Chris. On
Yeah,
the COVID, Steve, do we have a positive rate, a test positive rate that you know of?
Yeah, our positivity rate is 5.1% versus the state's 7.13. That has gone up It was 4.8 the last time.
I'll be 30 seconds.
Thank you very much, Steve.
That's no problem. I know we have at least one person who wants to make public comment, at least on the list here, that Nelson Malowitz. Nelson, are you with us? We may have lost him because.
I don't think, I didn't see him.
Yeah,
Oh.
okay. Anybody else, any from the public want to make public comment? Okay. One thing I would like to bring up on this, I know Nelson was going to bring this up. Nelson filed a complaint with the blight panel. And there seems to be some confusion in town as to what the blight panel does. Nelson filed a complaint on about 15 properties in the town center. A number of those properties, about 25% of them, we've already had before the blight panel. And we are pursuing every effort to get those properties cleaned up and unblighted. The town has very limited and arduous procedures that we have to go to meet Connecticut state statute to get these properties cleaned up. And at the end of the day, Tom, you can probably give us a better description. Each property owner gets three, as Tom put it, 3 bites at the apple to work with the blight panel and say to the blight panel, my property is not blighted. This can take many months to go through. And our final thing that we can do is to start finding people, but it's very hard to force them to clean up their properties. And Tom, would you like to make any comment on that, on how the blight panel works?
Well, you're right. The process, people get notices of violation before they get any actual specific violations. And then after all that's happened, then the citation and fine process can begin. So there's many notices that go out. I mean, the downside, as Steve said, is it delays sometimes getting results, although some property owners actually do respond fairly timely. Many have various excuses as to why they can't quickly respond. But once that process has been undertaken, the town does have the ability to take the citation process to court, which is fairly quickly taken care of, and put liens on the property so that the town ultimately will at least get some fine money back. And then ultimately for the more serious blight problems, we are processing 1 or 2 right now to actually go to court to get an injunction to require them to clean up their properties. But that's a last resort, obviously. Nobody wants to go that route unless the town absolutely has to.
Yeah, and since we formulated the blight ordinances, we've probably had 30 properties come through the blight panel. And I would say about 1/3 of them worked very cooperatively with us to clean up the properties. One that we've been working on for 3 years is 1 High Ridge Road that was owned by a gentleman who was in jail. And we were going after the mortgage company, and it was a long, involved process. But finally, if you drive by 1 High Ridge Road, a new owner came in, they've cleaned up the property, they're rebuilding the house, and it's starting to look really nice. This is a very, very difficult process to go through. And the blight panel, it's a tremendous amount of work. So I just, for the general residents and public who think, God, nothing's getting done, the blight panel is working as fast as it can to get these properties cleaned up. And we're not going to stop. And Tom has been instrumental in helping us do that, because it is very technical and you have to get it exactly right to go to court. And if you don't have it exactly right, they just kick it right out. And so far, Tom, I think we've had 3 or 4 properties where we've been successful in the courts. Is that right? I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but yes, we've been successful in getting the fines turned into judgments and judgment liens placed on the
Right.
properties.
Yeah, okay. So I think that answers, or partially answers, oh, there's Nelson. Nelson, are you with us? Can we unmute Nelson? Nelson.
Oh, he is?
See, we waited for you. I made your public comment for you.
I have,
Public comment?
I have a couple hats I'm going to wear.
Go ahead. Oh, there's Nelson. Nelson, are you with us?
I am. I had to get the meeting passcode from Harry. I didn't.
Yeah, we waited for you. I made your public comment for you.
We've got
I
a
heard
little bit
it.
of a loop. Nelson, I think you still have the YouTube open on your screen.
Can you hear me? Couple hats I'm gonna wear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Nelson, we can hear you, but you've got to turn
Looping.
YouTube off because there's like a 3-second delay.
Oh, all right, I turned my sound off.
Okay, there, you're good. We can hear
Okay,
you. That's
hopefully you
better.
can hear me.
No, we're still getting that feedback.
I don't know what's happening. Usually doesn't. Okay, a couple of things. One is I'm really appreciative that for the streetscape, presentation, or at least the movement to do the west side of from Four Corners to up through Newberry Village. That'll have a huge impact or positive impact, because right now when you come through, it just a terrible presentation of Brookfield coming from the New Milford or coming out of Brookfield. However, on the east side, there are a number of blighted properties with dilapidated structures, piles of junk, overgrown weeds, environmental hazards, inoperable vehicles that meet the definition of blight if you have the grass over a foot tall and that. So they're just, on that side is a problem. Anyway, there was 13 blight complaints, formal blight complaints were put in, and I don't know if they're going to deal with them or not. But anyway, the Newberry Village residents are really frustrated. As president of the Homeowners Association, it falls on me to, go through and make you understand leadership. So anyway, they were formerly, we have nothing against the property owners, are probably all nice people, but the problem is it just looks terrible. And it's interesting, if you look at the pictures in the field cards of those properties at 2016 and look at the place now, it's a clear, decline and blightism happening all through there. Anyway, so I just appreciate your focus on it. It looks like it's a hard job. Some of them that are blighted are not on your radar yet, but now they are, hopefully. So anyway, our letter is that, blight begets blight. It just continues to go downhill. They say, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it. And so that begins to be what's happening. We have some properties that are just beyond the pale.
I would agree with you, Nelson.
Anyway, I don't know. I'd be glad to sit in on one of the blight meetings to go through them, but I think I need to be invited. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're welcome to come to any blight meeting. The meeting is open. We've been holding them in the Selectmen's conference room downstairs in order to achieve social distancing, but you're more than anyone is welcome to come to a blight panel meeting and see the process. It's a difficult thing, and I think it's also important to note that we do not act on our own. We're not wandering around town looking for blighted properties. We do need a complaint from a resident or a property owner that property is blighted. Now that you've sent that to us, we're going to take up all 13. Well, no, 4 or 5 of them we already have on our blight panel. For example, 20 Station Road, we've gone all the way through the blight panel and they have been fined. We just got a judgment, a lien against them for $21,000 some odd dollars. And we're going to continue to take that further because we want that property cleaned up completely. We want that building torn down or rehabbed. I think it's easier to tear it down, but this is a process we have to go through. And I just want you and the residents in Newberry to realize that we have not been sitting on our thumbs here. We are moving as fast as we can. And there are very specific rules as to what you can and cannot do. And it's frustrating sometimes, but we're not going to stop doing it. Because I agree with you that this all needs to be cleaned up. Sue, Harry, any comment?
No, I know that
Completely
stretch
agree.
has been a real, I'm sorry, Sue, has been a real eyesore. And, unfortunately, most of the time you have to go to, it has to go to court to have any type of action. So I think we're doing pretty much everything we can do.
Yep, I think we are too. Okay. Anyone
And
else?
Nelson, thank you for bringing it to all our attention as well.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
we
getting the
appreciate
other properties on there, not just the 3 or 4 or 5 that we
Okay,
had.
anyway, there's a bunch of them. Other thing is that you have the toy collection, and we give out food at our church, Walnut Hill. We have about 500 people come, 500 meals every other week. And some are asking, can we get toys for our kids? So what about the other end? Who would I speak to?
I would talk to Chief Purcell. They primarily take their toys down to Yale New Haven, I believe, hospital for children.
Mhm.
But you can run a toy drive, right? If you wanted to.
Well, we're looking to collect toys to give away to people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll get with him.
Yeah.
Then I understand that Danbury has a vaccine program. At least they've teed one up for when it's available for their elderly population. Is anything happening in Brookfield along those lines?
For vaccinations,
Yeah.
yes. Our Director of Public Health, this is really not supposed to be a back and forth, but since you're the only member of the public willing to make comment. Our Director of Public Health is working with the state and the federal government. There is going to be different phases of people who get the vaccination and when they get it. I think originally now they're going to start with medical workers, EMTs, firemen, right? All those kinds of workers, and then assisted living facilities, which have a horrendous number of cases and deaths. And then it will go to seniors, is my understanding. Those final classifications have not come out yet, but as soon as we get them, we will tell everyone. And we are going to try to set up vaccinations in Brookfield, meaning that we will give out vaccinations ourselves like we did when we had the H1N1 virus, where we gave out 6,000 vaccinations.
Okay, I'm going to change hats and put on my WPCA hat, if I could. And that is, you talked about the water line to the Huckleberry. What we've done in the past is we go in with a number for voting. In other words, the town approval, the town vote, a little above what we expect it to be, so we don't have to go back for a second bite. So you just might want to put that in your.
I think we're going to be in the exact same case here. We just have to discuss the contingency. If we hit 400 feet of ledge, we might be in trouble on our budget, but I don't think we will. I think we're going to be okay.
Then the other thing on the WPCA is that we finished up the work on the Candlewood Lake study grant, and it turns out that we were the last one. Brookfield was the last ones to get any money from the DEEP for any grant for any study. So we got it not this past May, but May of the previous year, and ran through it. Others have been approved, but there's been no money to give away.
Yeah, right. Of course.
Anyway,
go ahead.
We're about to polish up that report. It's actually going to be the subject of a paper for what we did. And so then we hope to do a sewer project along the Dean Road. We had a public hearing for that, and we're going to put that together. And there's a choice whether or not to include some of the town buildings. So we're going to put that in as an option.
Okay.
And that would like reduce the amount it's really almost too much for the Dean Road people. And so we have to, as one possible solution, do that. But we're looking at keeping it as low cost as possible.
Sure.
They joke when you do a project like that ends up, they want to fix the road too. So it ends up being a road restoration project, but we're trying to avoid that.
When you get the Shores project, the sewage project, we'd like you to come before the Board of Selectmen and present your findings and what you've got like you did before. Give us an update.
Yeah, we'll build that because it'll be a significant infrastructure.
Did you read this study on how some cities are testing their sewage as an indicator of COVID outbreaks? Have you checked that?
That's been widely discussed, and Are
you taking samples? Finding out whether we got COVID in town?
We don't have a COVID meter on our pump stations. So,
okay.
Anyway, then we do hope to make a presentation. This is December, for the next meeting on a Brookfield market option.
Okay.
So, anyway, that's my WPCA hat. The only other thing is that we may have some space in our WPCA garages for some of the police vehicles. So I'll talk to Jay.
Yeah, talk to Jay. We'll see. Because I know
Great
Parks and
idea.
Rec needs space and the police need space. So yeah, let's do that. Let's have that conversation.
Okay. And
That's
we'll charge you
awesome.
rent.
Okay. You can charge me rent. I just won't pay it.
Well, that wouldn't be new. Okay, thank you.
I'm kidding. Yeah, let's discuss that because that might be a good option for us. Right? Okay.
Yeah,
So
good
next
idea.
time, Nelson, let's just put you on the agenda as an update from the WPCA instead of
Mhm.
public comment at the end.
Wow. That was
Okay, great.
I just threw it in at the end, so. I
Yeah,
just-
that's fine. That's good. No, that's good. Okay, Harry, Sue, anything else you'd like to discuss? No, John
I'm good.
Lucas, anything you want to discuss?
No, I just wanted to say I'm very happy that the audit is on time. It seems like we're gonna hit that 12/31 deadline. It seems if Marcia's working on the management discussion document, she's pretty much done, so that's great.
This is the first time in I don't know how many years, I know it's more than 8, that our auditor hasn't come to us and asked us to sign an extension letter
That's
with the
great.
state. And that audit is going to be finished by the end of the month, come hell or high water, right, Marcia? Regardless, it will happen. No, that's a
Thank
good
you.
thing. And that
Yeah.
just shows that we're getting these controls in better place and quicker. And Marcia's done a fantastic job on that.
Mhm.
Okay, so having said that, and everybody's had their comment, I want to thank everybody for the time you spent here. And we'll be seeing you at least on the 20th, right? For the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay,
Uh,
thanks,
and-
everybody. Have a good night. Okay,
All
bye-bye.
right. Good night.